This crime will feel like something straight out of a movie. We could even expect a movie sooner or later. That is how much twist, turn and confusion set it up in this crime. It's the story of Anni Dewani and Shrien Dewani, a newly married couple of Indian origin. As part of their honeymoon trip, they decided to travel to South Africa. As planned for their trip, they reached Cape Town, the capital of South Africa, and checked into their beautiful 5-star hotel. On November 13, 2010, the couple spent the day exploring Cape Town, visiting its stunning beaches, drinking wine and enjoying the sunset. The couple ended their day with a dinner at a Michelin hotel. After this eventful day, they decided to head back to their hotel. Both Anni and Shrien took a taxi around 11:30 p.m. While the taxi was passing through an area called Guguletho in Cape Town, two armed men suddenly stopped the car, threatening to shoot if they didn't stop. The couple was in shock. Shrien had no time to respond as he was beaten inside the car along with the taxi driver. Once the gang took Shrien's watch and wallet, both he and the taxi driver were pushed out of the moving taxi. As Shrien fell onto the road, he watched in horror as the taxi speeded away, with his wife still inside, held captive by the two armed men. Shrien couldn't believe what just happened. He was shivering and crying, lying on the road, unsure of how to save his wife. Hearing his cry, the nearby people rushed to ask about the incident. One man began talking to Shrien, trying to console him, and even called the police to start the search operation. Unfortunately, the police were unable to find Anni Dewani that particular night. After receiving the first aid, Shrien was discharged from a local clinic and the police dropped him back at his hotel. Shrien couldn't sleep the entire night. He started calling all of his contacts, desperate for help in finding his wife. The next morning, police knocked on Shrien's hotel door with the devastating news. They informed him that his wife is no more. She was shot dead after the thieves had stolen all her belongings. In complete disbelief, Shrien took his wife's body and left Cape Town, returning to his home country. At first, it seemed like this murder was committed because of a robbery, right? Even though no politicians, actors or big names were involved, the case quickly became internationally trending. 3 years later, BBC made a full documentary recreating the events leading to Anni Dewani's murder. But the question remains, why did international media along with BBC took such interest in what appeared to be a simple robbery murder case? The answer lies in what happened 1 week after Anni Dewani's murder. Cape Town police tracked the two murders along with the taxi driver. Once the South African police began investigating in their style, the taxi driver revealed the full story. He said that the entire incident was scripted. This wasn't a robbery at all. According to the taxi driver, Shrien Dewani, the husband of Anni Dewani, had planned and executed the entire murder of his own wife, and after everything was done, he fled back to his home country as if nothing had happened. Anni Dewani was an Indian origin, born and raised in a small city of Sweden called Mariestad. Shrien Dewani was also an Indian origin, settled in London. Anni first met Shrien back in 2009 in London. They both maintained a long-distance relationship, and after getting engaged, Anni moved to London before their wedding. After Anni's murder, in an interview, Anni's sister mentioned that Shrien was a perfectionist. He wanted everything to be perfect, and he controlled the people around him. This attitude of Shrien was slowly disliked by Anni. She came to know this side of Shrien only after getting engaged. They had trouble often, fighting for even the smallest argument. Anni even asked her parents several times if it is a good idea to stop the wedding. So what exactly happened on their honeymoon trip? On November 7, 2010, the couple reached Cape Town International Airport as planned. From there, both boarded another domestic flight and arrived at Kruger National Park, where they stayed for 4 days. During the stay, Anni frequently updated her sister through messages regarding the trip and their situation. It's important for us to understand these messages to get a sense on what was actually going between these couples during the trip. On November 10th, Anni messaged her sister saying that Shrien was taking care of her and behaving well, but she still wasn't happy despite all these efforts. Then the following morning on November 11th, she sent, "Today is much better. Things are changing slowly. meaning Annie had started getting feelings for Shrien again. The following day, both returned to Cape Town from Kruger National Park. That's when the couple met this taxi driver called Zolo Tango, who would be their tour guide and the taxi driver throughout their trip as planned. Zolo Tango drove this couple straight to their 5-star hotel called Cape Grace, which was located in the middle of Cape Town with a beautiful beach view. Soon after reaching the hotel, Shrien asked Annie to check in at the hotel lobby. That's when Shrien began to execute the murder plan. He started talking to Zolo Tango, saying, "I need to kill someone immediately, as soon as possible, tomorrow itself, and if you help me execute this murder, I will pay you big, close to 15,000 rand. Zolo Tango was in shock. He did not understand Shrien at first, trying to process what he had just heard, but his mind kept on thinking about the money he might receive. So Zolo Tango responded, "I'm just a taxi driver. I don't know how to commit a murder, but don't worry. I know few people who can do this job for you without the trace." After this discussion with Shrien, Zolo Tango left the hotel in his taxi and headed straight to a hotel called Colosseum. He went inside the lobby and spoke to a receptionist. "So who is this Monde Momblo in our story?" Although Zolo Tango agreed to help with this murder, he actually didn't know any killers. So he came to meet his friend Monde Momblo, who had contacts with the gang involved in killings. Both Zolo Tango and Monde Momblo went behind the hotel and started planning the murder. Monde Momblo had a friend who was jobless at the time, so he believed his friend could commit the murder along with someone else for a little money as possible. Now the team is ready along with the murder plan. On the other side of the story, both Shrien and Annie got ready for a dinner date. They both arrived at a famous local bar around 8:30 p.m. Just a few minutes after arriving at the bar, Shrien left Annie inside and walked out of the bar to call Zolo Tango. The bar waiter became a crucial evidence here. He mentioned that couples coming to the bar were usually close to each other, but this couple wasn't like that at all. On top of that, Shrien left Annie alone and went outside. During this call with Zolo Tango, Shrien made sure everything was well planned. After confirming the plan, Shrien returned back to the bar with a gentle killer smile on his face. Then Shrien continued to spend rest of the evening with Annie.
Very difficult to digest that, but at the same time, one glimpse of happiness was that he never said at any point that my daughter was abused.
November 13th, the day when Anni Dewani was planned to be murdered. Around 11:30 a.m., Shrien asked Zolo Tango to pick him from his hotel. Upon Zolo Tango's arrival, he asked him to take him to a local black market to exchange his US dollars to the local currency. After exchanging the currency, Shrien told Zolo Tango to stage his murder as if a robbery. He explained the full plan, instructing the killers to stop the car, beat both of them, and later kidnap her wife and kill her outside the city. With the entire plot set, Shrien Dewani asked Zolo Tango to arrive at the Cape Grace Hotel around 7:30 p.m. to pick them up. By 7:30 p.m., Zolo Tango still hadn't arrived at the hotel. Shrien was getting tense and furious. Since Zolo Tango had never committed a murder before, he was feeling anxious and scared. After waiting for a while, Shrien called Zolo Tango again. During the call, Shrien started shouting and threatening Zolo Tango, saying this murder has to happen today, so you would better come and pick us up right now. Scared by Shrien's tone, Zolo Tango had no other option and came them to pick them up at the hotel. It was actually Anni Dewani's wish to explore Cape Town during the night. Around 9:30 p.m. after spending some time in the city, they both reached a beachside hotel for dinner. After getting out of the taxi, Shrien asked Annie to go inside the hotel first. Once she left, Shrien started shouting at Zolo Tango again, saying, "This is the girl you need to kill tonight, and if the murder doesn't happen tonight, I will use the same money to plan your murder." Hearing this, Zolo Tango got scared and immediately called his friend Monde Momblo, telling that it is time to execute the murder that night as planned. Both Shrien and Annie finished their dinner, and at 10:30 p.m., the couple got into the taxi on their way back to the hotel. As the car was traveling, Zolo Tango sent a final message to Shrien saying, "Don't forget the money." Shrien responded with, "Don't worry, the money is already in the car's front seat." Within the next few minutes, the car reached the Guguleto area, where Monde Momblo was waiting with his killer friends. They stopped the car at gunpoint, got inside, and pushed both Shrien and the driver out, driving away with Annie and killing her outside the city. When they shot Annie, she covered her face with the hand, but the bullet still went straight through her hands to the neck area. Both men took all her belongings and left her inside the car and fled the scene. Annie died inside the car that night due to blood loss. The next day, police recovered Annie's body and handed over to Shrien.
The full picture will only emerge when Shrien comes down to Cape Town.
Now everyone including international media had just one question. As we know, Shrien and Annie left Kruger National Park on November 11th, arrived in Cape Town on November 12th, and by November 13th, Annie was murdered. How did Shrien plan this murder in just one day? He met Zolo Tango for the first time at the airport on the evening of November 12th. How did someone in a completely foreign country execute such a well-planned murder in just 24 hours? This was also the major flaw of the story, because up to this point, everything I explained about the murder plan and its execution style was based on Zolo Tango's story, his full narration after he was caught by the police. To escape this case, Zolo Tango gave this statement as part of his plea bargain in order to receive a reduced sentencing. After the statement from Zolo Tango, exactly after 3 years, the BBC released a complete documentary on this case. The documentary included the real footage of Annie and Shrien checking into the Cape Grace Hotel, restaurant footage, and footage of the couple visiting the bar where they had their last drink. It also featured phone calls and messages exchanged by Zolo Tango and Shrien Dewani. The BBC covered this entire crime with comprehensive evidence, presenting a full picture of events leading to Annie's murder. This documentary and the statements given by Zolo Tango had a lot of conflicts. Not everything was matching as per his statements. Out of all of his conflicts, the first one was that this was Shrien's first visit to South Africa, and he met Zolo Tango for the very first time at the airport, with just meeting him for 30 minutes before when Annie went to check in at the Cape Grace. How could Shrien explain and convince Zolo Tango to commit a murder in less than 6 minutes? According to the CCTV footage, that's how long Shrien was talking to Zolo Tango outside the hotel. In his defense, Shrien said that he and Zolo Tango was discussing about the tour plan and what they were going to visit in the next 3 days. The second conflict was when Shrien left Annie at the bar and went out to call Zolo Tango. There was no CCTV footage showing Shrien calling Zolo Tango outside the bar. Instead, the CCTV showed Shrien entering the hotel. To counter the statement, Shrien said police that he left his phone at the hotel and he went to pick it up. And now the third conflict in this case. Zolo Tango might not have arrived at the hotel around 7:30 p.m. on the day of murder. In his statement, he said that he was scared to commit the murder, and Shrien had called him at 7:45 p.m. to threaten him if he did not execute the plan. But on November 13th, around 7:45 p.m., according to the CCTV footage, Annie and Shrien was inside the Cape Grace Hotel bar. The footage clearly shows Shrien taking the call right in front of Annie and speaking to Zolo Tango. So how could Shrien have threatened Zolo Tango right in front of Annie? The fourth and the final conflict came when Zolo Tango messaged Shrien to remind him about the money they had agreed upon to the murder. According to Zolo Tango's statement, he said Shrien replied that the money was in the front seat. However, after tracing Zolo Tango and Sherien's phone, it was found that the message was only sent by Zolo Tango and no response was received from Shrien. So the real truth behind the case was that it was a robbery that turned into a murder. This was a well-planned and executed setup by Zolo Tango and his team, framing Shrien as a killer to escape from the case or to get a reduced sentence. According to BBC, when investigating this case, they found that other tourist murder also had similar patterns, leading to suspicions that other robbery murder might have also been for the same reason. The actual plan was to kidnap Annie for robbery, but she tried to resist and escape from the kidnappers. This forced the kidnapper to accidentally fire the bullet. In shock, they took Annie's belongings and fled the scene. This theory was also supported by crime investigation experts, who stated that if the kidnapper's motive was to kill, they would have shot her on the head, not on the neck area. In 2014, Shrien was brought to South Africa for investigation. Based on all the CCTV footage and other evidence, Shrien was proven innocent and the court released him from all the charges. The taxi driver Zolo Tango was sentenced to 18 years in prison, while his friend Monde Moblo received 25 years for pointing the gun and kidnapping Annie. The killer who fired the bullet died in prison from a brain tumor. What do you think about this case? Who might be the real killer? Comment down below. I will see you in the next video. Until then, Cristiano signing off.